Sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, friends, neighbors, comrades, all citizens of the world, wherever you're going, wherever you've been, and wherever you're at, we welcome you to the Live from the Heartland show here on YouTube. New episodes air every Friday at 9 a.m. Central Time with individual interviews posted throughout the following week. I'm your host, Michael James, encouraging you to take the chain from the brain, to get back in the people's game, because it's time to move from the lower level to the higher, from the shallower to the deeper, from the one-sided to the many, and from the abstract to the concrete. So without further ado, let's get it on. Welcome, all you citizens of the world. Once again, it's Michael James here with another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This one is for the week of April 20th in the year 2024, and we are recording it on Monday the 15th. We've got a couple of interesting guests today. We got Carden coming back. He's with the Workers' Rights Board and the Labor Film series that we've been talking about on a monthly basis. And then we're going to have Trevor Toppen from Val's Halla's Records, and we're getting ready for Record Store Day, which is coming up on the 20th, and he's going to fill us in on all events around that and a little bit of its history. Let me just share, too, that this is the 200th time we've done a Zoom show. Many of you who have followed the history of Live from the Heartland know that it used to be up on the stage at the good old Heartland Cafe, now long gone. We moved downtown to the studio of WLUW. And with the pandemic, we moved to our home doing it via Zoom. And this is the 200th Zoom. We've done a lot of these over time, and it really has afforded us an opportunity to meet with people far and wide. We've met with people in Texas, people in Brazil, people in Thailand, and throughout the country. A couple of things I want to share before we bring on our guests. One of the most pleasant was that it was a warm weekend here in Chicago, a little warmer than anticipated or expected or normal. And on Saturday, I participated with other members of the Network 49, a progressive political operation here in the ward. And we had a thank you session for all the people who worked on Bring Chicago Home and turning out the vote. And while we were not victorious with that, in our ward, we had over 70% for it. It's certainly an issue that's going to keep coming up. Homelessness is not going away. It's increasing, and it's a bigger and bigger challenge. And I think that we'll figure out what kind of mistakes we made so that we can bring this or something similar to the forefront in the months and year to come so that we can really confront homelessness in a real significant way. On Sunday, it was even warmer here in Rogers Park, up here in the far north end of Chicago, right along the edge of the Great Lake, Michigan. And some of you know that I set up a gallery on my front porch. Sometimes I call it the Prairie Dancer Gallery or the Prairie Dancer Front Porch Gallery or just plain old Front Porch Gallery. And this was the first time this year, and we had a really good time. A number of people came to visit. Old pals from various political groups I've been in, and a couple of friends who had disappeared a few years back when they joined the Marines, and they are on the edge of getting out of the Marines, and we're in town, not sure why, but they shared some information about where people in the Marine Corps are at, where whites versus blacks are at, people from rural to urban areas. They did say that they thought that the white officers tend to be more liberal than people might expect. So that was a little good news, and was fun to see all the people who came by the gallery. And just for your information, whenever it's warm, over 60, not raining, we're out there. Just for conversation or look at my books or photos, I appreciate all of you who showed up. One of the bad things that has happened in our ward lately up here in the 49th was we've had a few shootings and some deaths. There was another one recently, just a couple days back on Morse Avenue. So people are really paying attention to issues around gangs and safety and supporting local businesses that are nearby where some of these things have happened. It's a crisis not only in Chicago, but around the country. too many guns, too many people with guns, too many people not getting enough education or opportunity and taking it out on each other. It's really pretty sad. And it's pretty much an American phenomena, but there have been mass shootings and knifings now in other parts of the world, as well as other parts of the country. One of the things we are looking forward to is the vote in Chattanooga, where the United Auto Workers are trying to once again bring in a union. And that vote is taking place at the end of this week on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the 3 days before this is aired on WLUW 88.7 or some of the other places where it's aired. And I think with all of that said, I'm not going to go into sports or a lot of other things. I'm just going to leave more time for our guests. So we're going to take a musical break. Our engineer, Hal James, will bring us a tune or two, maybe just one to start off with, and we'll be back with our first guest. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial.
Sat in the corner of the garden grill with the plastic flowers on the windowsill. No more miracles, loaves and fishes, been so busy with the washing of the dishes. Reaction levels much too high. I can do without the stimuli.
Welcome back, everybody. This is live from the Heartland for the week of April 20th. It's our 200th Zoom version of Live from the Heartland, and we're glad you're listening in. Our next guest is someone who is becoming familiar to the show, and some of you may remember when he was on recently talking about the Workers' Rights Board. It's the one and only Tommy Carden, and we've got him here again today. I think we got to turn you into our main labor reporter, Tommy. Good to
I'll
see
take
you.
it. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for having me again.
You're a busy guy. You're out there organizing. And initially, this started off when our friend Peter Kuttner he talked to us about a film series, a labor film series that you're very much involved with. So let's start with that, because you have another version of the Jobs with Justice Workers' Rights Board labor film series. This month, it's a film called The Hand That Feeds. And why don't you give a little information about the series in general and the particular film and what people might expect and when they can see it?
Absolutely. Also, the 200th episode, I feel like that I'm pretty lucky. That's a nice round number, 200.
Yes.
Congrats on 200.
Let's hope we're here for 1,000.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the Jobs with Justice Workers' Rights Board labor film series is ongoing, and that's last time I was on your show. I talked about the UAW film. But the film we're going to be showing in just over a week, so next Thursday, April 25th, is a film called The Hand That Feeds. And it's about a group of immigrant workers, of undocumented immigrant workers, working at a bakery in New York on the Upper East Side. And these workers are facing low pay. They're facing, to some extent, unsafe working conditions, dangerous machinery. And they've had enough. And they know there's a risk in coming together and standing up for their rights because they're undocumented. But it's a story of how they're, organizing to form a union. And this is right around the time that the Occupy Wall Street protests are happening as well. So there's some overlap between what's happening with Occupy Wall Street and the struggle that these workers have going on in their bakery on the shop floor. So it's a really good film. There's a lot of really relevant questions in there today. Immigrant workers are really the backbone of our economy, and we're hoping this film brings a good discussion with workers who are there organizers to sort of talk about the current state of immigrant worker organizing and what people can do to support immigrant workers like the ones in the film coming together. So
Uh,
this will be, yeah, Thursday, April 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. And we're going to be doing it at the Chicago Jobs with Justice Hall, which is at 333 South Ashland. So everyone should come out and join us.
Tell us people what the earlier films were and what are some films that are coming up so they can get an overall picture. And then we'll focus a little bit more on this one and on immigrant workers.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so the first film we did in this year's kind of installation for this series was we did two films in January focused on healthcare workers organizing. So we screened HSA Strike 75, about the Cook County Hospital strike. Um, we also showed I Am Somebody, about the sanitation workers strike that Coretta Scott King was famously involved with. Um, then we did the UAW, the United Auto Workers film around the League of Revolutionary Black Voters, who were coming together
In
to fight
Detroit, right?
against in Detroit.
The
Yeah,
Revolutionary Black Workers. Yeah, they were pretty forceful for a time there.
absolutely. Yeah. And then we just screened last month. We screened Haskell Wexler's film, documentary film, "Who Needs Sleep," and we had workers from IATSE talk about sort of their upcoming contract fight and sort of how a lot of the issues that Wexler was documenting in 2006 when it comes to sleep deprivation in the film industry is still very much an issue that people are facing today. So that was a good discussion. And for all those films, we had workers from the industry that the film was focusing on. We had them come and speak and talk about the film, talk about what's changed, what hasn't since the film was made, and talk about some of their current fights. And for this film, we're going to have hopefully some workers and maybe some staff from worker centers through the Raise the Floor Alliance. So Warehouse Workers for Justice, my organization, we're a part of Raise the Floor. And all of the worker centers that are part of this, alliance, we're all organizing low-wage workers in, a lot of non-unionized industries. So for my organization, it's warehouse workers. There's others within Raise the Floor that focus on, manufacturing workers, domestic workers, a whole host of industries that have a lot of immigrant workers working in them.
Tell us a little bit more about your organization and the situation of warehouse workers in general. I remember from when we did that interview, uh, I was overwhelmed almost by how large Amazon was in terms of how many people they employed and how many people uh, are working there and don't have a union. What's the latest in that situation?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm sitting right now in my office in Joliet, where we do a lot of our work. It's where when we got started, we did pretty much all of our work out here in Joliet, one of the biggest logistics hubs in the country. With all the class one railroads and interstates sort of converging out here in Will County, a lot of major logistics companies, they need to have warehouses out here, right? To have access to the Chicago market, right? And sort of markets all across the Midwest. It really connects the country, the east and west parts of the country. Everything comes through Chicago. But yeah, last time we talked about Amazon and Amazon. There's one unionized facility right in New York, but they still don't have a contract. Amazon has thrown everything they can at that union to prevent them from getting a contract, and now we see companies like Trader Joe's, right, trying to call into question the constitutionality of the National Labor Relations Board, and Amazon's right there too. They'd love to get all these elections thrown out or stop the organizing before it even gets started. But yeah, not much has changed, unfortunately, since we last talked when it comes to Amazon, as far as I can tell.
All right, let's get a little more information about the actual situation for immigrant workers. They're
Mhm.
featured in the film The Hand That Feeds, uh, but we know that it's been an issue. We have a lot of immigrants coming. We have the border, which is a real hot spot for political debate and issues. And
Yeah.
we've heard very often, I mean, people say all the time, let people work, let them go to work. What is the actual situation for immigrant workers here in Chicago and in general throughout the country?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of the people we're working with, we work with some newer arrivals. People have come to the country relatively recently, but a lot of the people that we work with have been in this country for some time now, right? For years. Some of them have been here for decades, and they still can't work legally, right? They are not able to get work permits, right? They're not able to get citizenship. They're not able to get any sort of legal status in this country. So they're living in the shadows, really. And for a lot of the workers that Warehouse Workers for Justice works with, they go to the only place they know they can get a job reliably, right? Through the temporary staffing agencies. And it's sort of a misnomer, right? These workers are called temps, but a lot of them have been there for years, working for the same agency, and they're making very little money. They're making maybe $15 an hour, $16 an hour, and so immigrant workers, really rely on temp agencies for work, and um, those are also the employers that really take advantage of people. They know, right? This is the only spot somebody's going to be able to get a job, or one of the only spots someone's going to be able to get a job. So the discrimination is rampant. The lack of training, right, on health and safety is a big issue. Um, and it's we work with a lot of workers who are trying to come together and trying to fix things in their workplace. So yeah, it's a real big issue. And we try to give people the tools they need to know their rights. Their rights, even if they're undocumented, right? Your rights you have as a worker working in this country, and try to give people the tools they need to fight back and demand more from the companies that certainly could be paying them more and treating them a lot better.
Tommy, can you give me a sense of how many? What is the ethnic background or the country of origin for a lot of workers? I'm sure it's across the globe, but in the past it was probably a lot of Mexican workers.
Yeah,
I don't know what the situation is now. Can you shed any light on that?
it's still a lot of Mexican workers. I would say, yeah, a good number of the immigrant workers that come to my organization um, are Mexican, but Guatemalans as well, some Colombians, and then occasionally some newer arrivals like from Venezuela, for sure. Um, but um, but yeah, still for warehousing out here, a lot of Mexican workers. Yeah.
And I understand there's a new initiative from Homeland Security that affects work permits. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be something that I really hope will be part of the discussion at this film on the 25th. But there's this new tool that worker centers like Warehouse Workers for Justice have been using now for over a year, maybe close to a year and a half, and it's called deferred action. So this is a newer initiative under the Biden administration, from the Department of Homeland Security, and it's basically the DHS cooperating with the main sort of labor agencies. So at the federal level, that's Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, OSHA, Wage and Hour Division. And then at the state level, that's the Illinois Department of Labor, the Illinois Department of Human Rights. Um, Essentially, what this program does is any worker who, any undocumented worker who's actively cooperating in an investigation against their boss, um, if that agency deems it necessary, if they say they give the green light for it, workers can get work authorization. So workers can get a work authorization for 2 years. They get a social security number. They get a driver's license. They get to have status in this country. even if it's only for 2 years. So this has been a really, really important initiative from the federal government, one that has been really, really useful in resulting in um, more productive investigations into bad bosses. And it's also been one that has allowed workers to have the confidence they need to speak up and to come together when there's issues in the workplace. It helps remove the tool from employers to say, you know what, we're going to call ICE, or we're going to hold your back. We're going to hold it against you. We know you're undocumented. This gives workers the security that they need to actually be able to speak out and organize. So it's been a really helpful tool, and one that we really, really want to see continue, in the future. So
Are there any differences state by state the way immigrant workers are treated? I mean, a company could threaten their workers because you're not a citizen. We're going to call ICE. You mentioned that, but I'm wondering if a state like Illinois, which is progressive at least in part, is any different than Kansas or some other place, or is it
yeah,
pretty much a similar situation?
the progressive depends on the issue, right?
Than the part
um,
of the state you're.
yeah, that too. That too. It's some states are better than others. Some states have more protection. So, the Illinois Human Rights Act, right? There's more protected classes, and there's more protection, frankly, for undocumented workers who face discrimination due to their national origin and a whole host of other identities. There's been some movement in the state legislature here, with some bills that would actually try to make it illegal to retaliate against somebody based on their immigration status. So we're really hoping some of those bills move forward, and that would be a big step. That would be a really, really big step for immigrant workers' rights in Illinois. But certainly, yeah, some states are better than others. Illinois is generally a little more favorable. But when it comes to the workplace, I mean, bosses still have way too much power to do whatever they want to workers and hold immigration status over people, unfortunately.
When you were talking earlier about temporary get halls or hiring halls,
Yeah.
uh, it brought back memories of my early days in Uptown in Join Community Union, which was, I was there 66 to 69. And one of the main
Hmm.
issues for mostly Southern migrants coming from Appalachia and stuff were these day labor hiring halls. It's probably the
Mm.
same thing as these temporary halls, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It
And they
sounds
would
like
take you
it.
to the job, they'd drive you to the job or tell you how to get there. They'd take transportation money, they'd take a cut of your pay. It was brutal.
Mhm.
And I don't
Yeah.
think was there ever any lessening of that? Or is it just continued and even magnified today with the size of the Amazons of the world?
I think it just takes different forms, right? I think that what you're describing, I mean, still exists, especially for day laborers. So people who are working maybe, for 1 day assignments, doing construction. I mean, you go on corners, right? In some parts of the city, especially on the Southwest side, and you see people just waiting to get picked up, right?
Right.
And going to work. And for those workers, there's very little protections. And there's worker centers like an organization called Latino Union in Albany Park that really focuses on day laborers. But with temps, I mean, the thing that's so messed up is that a lot of these people actually might work for the same temporary staffing agency. And some of them, the company has it so that after 90 days, you're supposed to get hired directly by the company. So at the 89th day, the agency says there's no work for you, right? And they come back and the clock starts over and it's day one again, right? So it's a real messed up system.
There's a lot of anti-immigrant talk, particularly on the Republican side of things in the country.
Yeah.
And yeah, you probably have some perspective about jobs that are out there and the need for workers. I mean, it seems like the job market is, it's good for workers. More and more people are needed. I've
Mhm.
seen some smaller towns further west, like Kansas, maybe other places where they welcome immigrants because they need people. They're trying to keep these starving towns together,
Mhm.
and repopulate them with immigrants. Any sense of Anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of jobs available here, right? Out in warehousing in Will County, in suburban Cook County. And there's a lot of people who want to work right now, right? And we need to do what we can as a society to integrate people, right, into society and get people work authorization, right? It seems like common sense, and from that good reporting and good writing that Juan Gonzalez has done, right, about how um, it, this is a public policy decision, and it's very easy for us as a society to make it possible to get Ukrainians, right, set up in our society here in Chicago to work and to live as we should. But we should also be doing this for immigrants who are coming to this country, often because of foreign policy decisions that our country has made, right? So it's really possible. There's a lot of jobs out there. There's a lot of people here who want to be working, so let's get them work permits, and let's get people set up for some stability in the city and in this country.
I'm for that. And let's one more time give us the information about the April 25th showing, the address, the name of the film, and what time people should show up.
Absolutely. So this Labor film series, the next film is going to be The Hand That Feeds, Thursday, April 25th. We're going to be starting at 6 p.m. And we'll be at the Chicago Jobs with Justice Hall in Chicago at 333 South Ashland.
Okay, Tommy Carden, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I imagine we'll be talking again next month.
Absolutely. Likewise. Always
Okay.
good talking with you too.
Keep up the great work. And everybody else, stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, or however you're getting the Live from the Heartland show. And we'll be right back after a little bit of music. And our next guest will be talking about Record Store Day. Be right back.
Forever, my darling, my love will be true, always and forever. I'll love just you. Just promise me, darling, your love in return. Make this fire in my soul, dear, forever burn. My heart's at your command, dear, to keep love and to...
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of April 20th. Once again, we are recording it on the 15th, and we are getting ready for Record Store Day. Our music producer, Lynn Orman, comes through with some really good guests and some topics and things that I include in the show. And I reached out to her. I say, you got anything? And she said, yeah, Record Store Day. And so we're going to have Trevor Toppen of Valhalla's Records joining us. I just want to say a couple things leading up to it, that in getting ready for this interview, I had a lot of memories floating through my mind about record stores and what a magnet they were for young people and our teens. I'm 82 years old, so I remember going to record stores from 1956 on. I think the first record I ever got was Pledging My Love by Johnny Ace. A little bit later, I got a Big Bill Broonzy album, and I had various versions of One Record Store in my hometown. I started going to them again when we had the Heartland Cafe up here, and we went to Round Records, and then later my kids' band Twin Peaks did some record store days, and records have come back. So without any more talk from me, let's bring on our guest, Trevor Toppen. Good
Thanks for
afternoon,
having
to you,
me.
Trevor.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll follow up on what you just said. It's definitely become something that there's been a rebirth in the younger generation really embracing vinyl, which has been exciting. So, if you were to rewind at our store maybe 10 years, our typical customer was probably 50-year-old guy listening to classic rock and folk. And now it's great because it's I would say more than 70% of our customers are 30 and under, and very ethnically diverse, and just as many women participating as men. And ultimately, at a record store, what's great is it's about conversations, right? It's not about being able to buy that record, but to come in and discover something new, talk to people about what they're listening to. And the more diverse the people are in that conversation, the better the conversation. So it's been great.
Yeah, well, record stores are a place to go when you travel sometimes, I mean, I remember going to Madison and looking through records. I still have a lot of records. I don't know if I could show you over here.
Nice.
Tons of records, and I'm not sure what to do with them, but I remember when Twin Peaks put out their first record, they didn't even do a CD of it. They,
Yeah.
I think they may have reissued it later, but they were all excited about records, and now you get them in different colors, and
Yeah.
with enough of that, let's talk about Record Store Day and your own record store,
Sure.
Valhalla's. Uh, let's do Record Store Day first, and then we
Sure.
can give us some history of Valhalla's.
Yeah, so Record Store Day is this amazing event. It is Christmas and Hanukkah and Easter and Valentine's Day all wrapped up together for us. It's the big day of the year.
Make it a national holiday.
It is, yeah. As far as we're concerned, it is a national holiday. So, but basically, what it is there's an organization, Record Store Day, that stemmed from indie record stores, and they've worked with artists and labels to curate all these really interesting releases. So sometimes it's maybe a record that's been out of print for a long time, or it's a special edition of a vinyl. Maybe it's lost tracks from something that get reissued. So it's definitely appeals to sort of the collector mentality. So and the list this year, I want to say that we're probably bringing in title wise probably 320 titles of records, times however many quantity we were getting of each of them. So it's lots of stuff. There's a little something for everybody. So
is Record Store Day celebrated by chain record stores, or is it a solely independent? And what is the situation with chains versus independents?
Sure. I would say, there are like regional chains of stores where it's like more than one storefront, but at the heart of it, it's indie record stores. So it's not, the fact that Target sells vinyl, Target's not participating in, Record Store Day. So it tends to be, most of Record Store Day is made up of independent single store places, but there's some great other record stores in Chicago, like Reckless. It's, they have 3 locations, so they're a chain, but, at the heart of it, they're an indie record store as well. So they'll be participating.
Well, tell us about Valhalla's, because it's been around for a long time. I think back in the old days with Rising Up Angry, the organization and newspaper that I was affiliated with, we used to drop papers off there.
Oh, yeah.
And then later the Heartland Journal, I think we dropped it off there. Record stores were the place that you went to get information on the draft or the war or the good music and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so Val's is 52 years old this year. I'll be 53 in July, and basically founded by this amazing woman, Val Camilletti, who passed in 2018. But her legacy, she's still every part of this store. So my personal history. So Shane Blakely is the store manager, and he's been here for 23 years, and he's just gone over the 40 mark. So most of his life he's been working records here in at Valhalla. So my involvement, most record stores that went through the Napster years, the 90s, struggled through that period because suddenly music was free. And so like most independent record stores, it was struggling when Val passed, and Shane was kind of trying to keep it going with one arm tied behind his back. So I got involved just after that. He'd announced the store was going to close in November of 19, and I've lived in the community for a long time, and I said that that can't happen, and we got to figure out a way to keep this going. So I said, if somebody were to come in and help you out, would you continue to run this? And he said, sure, but who'd be dumb enough to do that? And I said, well, I might be dumb enough to do that. So but the one thing that I like to say is I don't like to think of myself as the new owner of Val's, because that just somehow seems blasphemous. I like to think that I'm the current steward of Val's. This place is owned by Val, or it's owned by our community. It's it's a living, breathing thing. So it's really cool.
What were you doing before you got involved with Val's?
Yeah, so I'm a bean counter by trade. So I'm not a musician. I'm a music lover. I got a family full of artists and musicians. But it was one of those things where I do consulting, helping troubled companies, and so it was like, this is something that I can use my skill set to help a business that's important to me. So it's been remarkably rewarding. So
What do you have planned for this Saturday?
yeah, so the very first part of the day tends to be they're all those gems that people want to get that are limited edition quantity, and we're only going to get 4 or 5. So people will start, last record store day, we had a guy that got in line at 10:30 the night before so he could be first person in line. But I will probably start my day showing up here at about 5:30 in the morning. We open at 9, and I'll be serving coffee to the probably 20 or 30 people that will be in line already at 5:30. So the first part of the day is just, it's chaos and the store's full with people all scrambling to get their titles. But then we're going to settle in around noon, and we've got live music going all day as well. So while the exclusive titles are an important part of Record Store Day, celebrating the environment of record stores and what that means is kind of an important part as well. So that's, so we plan on having musicians and live music, and we have specials all day. There's a place across the street, Taco Mucho is an amazing restaurant he's going to be making tacos out back. And so it's just it's a big party all day long.
What are some of the live musicians you've had in the past? And if you want to mention any that are coming up this week.
Sure. So I guess probably most iconically, a band that I certainly dear to our hearts, Flat Five, great sort of super group out of Chicago, has played here before. Last Record Store Day, we actually were very blessed. Cesar Rosas of Los Lobos played with the Chi-Town Playboys. So it was a collection of local blues artists. And again, that was kind of this strange, one day Cesar walked into the store. We talked for a while. I didn't recognize who he was because he didn't have the iconic sunglasses on. And because of that, we had, I think, a human conversation instead of a fan, artist conversation. And we kind of struck up a friendship. And, when he comes into town, he usually stops in the store. And we've been carrying a copy. His first album, the Los Lobos' first album, was before they were signed to a record label. And it's pretty rare. And he still had some copies, and he's been selling them to us that we've been offering to our customer base for the last year or so. And opportunity came up. He was around the holidays. He came into town. And I said, we'd love to sell more of those records. And I'm like, well, if you put your keister on that stage, maybe we could sell a bunch of them. And we looked at his schedule, and Los Lobos tours all the time, and magically he played last Record Store Day. And then probably most famously, John Prine was a huge fan of Val's in the store, and he used to bring his test pressings to her to listen. And when she passed, he came and insisted on doing a memorial in her honor. So really special. So obviously he continues to hold an important place in our heart as well.
What are some of the hottest vinyls these days in your store and even beyond? Sure.
Obviously the queen of all vinyl and all music at this point is Taylor Swift. And it's staggering how much influence she has. I think that last Record Store Day, there were like the top 2 titles that were sold through Record Store Day. I think there was a Pearl Jam title that was a live album that maybe accounted for 15,000 copies worldwide that were being sold. And I want to say that Taylor Swift was like 135,000. And 135,000 was a tenth of what was needed to supply the demand. I mean, it's staggering how much she has appeal across different generations, different people. She's a force of nature.
Yeah, she's something else, and she has pretty good politics, from my understanding.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for her.
Right. She has, to add to Record Store Day, she actually has a new album coming out on Friday as well. So that adds to all of the chaos that we get to deal with coming up this week.
How many of her record do you think you'll sell on Saturday? How many did you get?
I would guess we're still finding out. So it is a very last minute, like they're not here yet. And she's very careful about making sure that stuff doesn't get delivered until release day so that nothing can get leaked. So, I will probably have a couple hundred copies in store. So, and they'll go off the shelf pretty quickly. So,
One of the things that Lynn Orman, our music producer, gave me in a list of things is she says, "Are you pressing records? Do you
yeah.
actually do any pressing of records?"
Yes. So Lynn and I ran into each other there's this great organization called the Bitter Gesture Music Festival. And it's up in Highland Park. And it's essentially an organization that supports young emerging artists. So bands have to be, half the members have to be 21 and under. And they get submissions. It's essentially a battle of the bands type of a competition, but they get submissions from all over the country. And they do 4 nights of competition, whittling down to a finals. And the finals in 2022 were supposed to be held in July up in Highland Park. And unfortunately, that's when the unfortunate shooting happened. And so all the artists were up there during the parade when this unfortunate happened. So thanks to the generosity of Billy Corrigan from Smashing Pumpkins, they ended up holding the finals later that year in September at his place, Madame Zuzu's. And they got an amazing board recording off of this really special concert. And at this point, it was still a competition, but any aspect of competition had gone away. This was a healing moment of artists getting together to support a community. And so we partnered with them, and we actually pressed that record to vinyl. So it was the first record that Vals has done in the 50 years. And we're proud again. So 2023's finals, we recorded as well. And we just, that's coming out. I think they were pressed at Smash Plastic here in Chicago, and that'll be released probably at the end of this month. And we're taking pre-order copies on Record Store Day for that record as well. So
there's a big gap. There's a big gap between someone ordering an album to be pressed and when it happens. My understanding. Sure. I had one son was in what was the name of that band? Smith Westerns, and then my son Cadian was in Twin Peaks, and he has a new album out called Dizzy under the name Lake J. And I know that I think it's almost till December till they're going to get the actual vinyl
in hand. Yeah,
that's the way it is generally. Or are there more people setting up presses to do more?
There's been a lot of investment presses. I think people, you had a huge boom in vinyl, and I think everyone was waiting to see, is this just a fad or is this something that's going to stick? And I think enough increases every year have finally demonstrated the fact that this is for real. And so there's been a lot of investment in presses. So lead times are starting to come down quite a bit too, which is great.
Do you have a favorite album, a favorite performer?
Yeah, I would say over the course of my lifetime, the most significant performer is probably Peter Gabriel. And I was fortunate enough to see him again this coming through Chicago this year, which was great. And it was also cool because I have 2 sons, one's at college and one's a senior in high school, and getting to see that show with them because I was their age and younger when I really first got into Peter Gabriel. So it was kind of a cool capstone moment for me. So it was really great.
Any advice to young musicians about getting their music out into the world?
I do. So one, we do, we've got a stage here at Vals, and a large part of our mission is to give opportunities for young artists to play. If you're under 21, there's a lot of places that you can't play in Chicago. And so we've made a concerted effort to be a place where people can come. But essentially, if you're a young artist and you want to be in places, my main recommendation is go see shows and go meet other artists that are out there. It's like the tide rises all boats, right? So get out there and support other musicians and meet people. And actually, this Bitter Gesture Music Festival is a great example of, 40 bands are going to get together and meet each other. And probably the best part of it is the networking opportunities that come out of it. So go support other musicians, and it'll come back to you. So
one more time, give us the address of Valhalla's and the date, which is Saturday the 20th. I'll do that.
Yeah. So Valhalla Records. We're at 239 Harrison in Oak Park. And we open at 9 a.m. on Record Store Day. And if there are those gems that you want to get, come in line early and I'll come out and get you a cup of coffee.
Well, I tell you what, we only have a couple minutes left. So talk about music, about records, anything you like, anything that strikes your fancy for the next couple minutes.
Sure. I guess one of the things that pops into my head with the young generation, getting into vinyl, we get asked a lot, like, does music sound better on vinyl? And I don't think there's this empirical, like, yes, no answer. There's some preferential stuff. Really well recorded music on a great stereo system is going to sound great. But I think to a generation that is always on their phones and is always engaged in 10 things at once, like the idea of I'm going to go listen to a record means I'm going to put the needle on and I'm going to kind of stop what I'm doing. And for people, I think the young generation, I don't know that they tangibly know why they love it so much, but I think it's that they're unplugged from everything else. And so you're actively listening to music as opposed to like passively listening while you're doing something else on your phone or whatever. And there's something very zen, I think, about what that is. And I think that's a big part of why the appeal has continued to this young generation for continuing to pursue vinyl. So
do you find any of the younger people listening to blues, traditional blues, Chicago blues?
So what's interesting is a lot of the entry point for a young customer is hip hop. But what is really cool is a customer that's coming in for vinyl is curious, right? They're taking this new exploration into this new format, and so inevitably what happens is, oh, there's that hook on this record. What got sampled on that record? And I'll tell you what it largely leads them to is now they're buying jazz records and they're buying blues records because that's the beat that was behind that amazing track that they know. And so there's this really cool discovery moment of where did that come from, and bringing them back to the roots of great American music. So.
Well, I'm going to do a shout out to the late, great John Sinclair, who put on the Ann Arbor Blues and Jazz Festivals, and he passed away last week. And we did have an earlier interview with him, but he was just someone in my life that really put it out there for people to listen to jazz and to blues and the things that a lot of the young rock and rollers back in the day didn't know about, right, and helped to popularize it. And I got to admit that I like it all. I like the rock and roll. I like the blues. I like the jazz. I even listened to a little classical in my old age.
Sure.
Okay, Trevor.
When you expose yourself to things, you learn that there's great stuff in all of those genres. So.
Okay, you were a great interview, and I hope you get a whole lot of people coming out to Valhalla's record store, not only on a record store day on Saturday the 20th, but forever. And thanks a lot.
We appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Everybody else, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Well, all you citizens of the world, once again, we're coming to an end of a Live from the Heartland show. This actually was, once again, I'm going to share this, number 200 that we've done via Zoom. Back in the old days, we used to have the sounds of the kitchen at the Heartland Cafe, people talking. We'd get musicians up on the stage. It was pretty wonderful. And then when the Heartland closed, we moved it downtown to the WLUW studios. And that was pretty wonderful. It gave Tom Clark, Katie Hogan, and myself a good time to talk about the things that we were going to do on the show. And then we'd go back home up here to Rogers Park and get some good food at the Heartland. That was fun, but when the pandemic came, we moved it to Zoom. And it took a while to get a hang of it, but it really has afforded us an opportunity to talk to people far and wide without having them have to come downtown at 9 o'clock in the morning when the show first airs on WLUW. As many of you know now, the show is also on Lumpen Radio, it's on CAN TV, and it's on youtube.com/Heartland Media anytime you want it. You don't have to be up early or going to bed late. Whatever it is, you can find it. We have a lot of big plans for the show. We have a lot of people we want to keep bringing on. We're really open to you suggesting people you think we should bring on, or if you yourself have something you think would be a good segment for the show, please hit us up. The easiest email is mine, fatback@aol.com. And I always like to hear from people, and I love it when people tell us that they listened to the show or they heard such and such and they liked it. We're going to keep doing it. I want to just call your attention one more time to last week's show when we had John Sinclair, an interview we did with him back in November of 2022. He passed away on April 2nd, and he was a wonderful, inspirational guy, particularly in the music world. Those of you who listen to WLUW regularly know that Tom Jackson did a whole show of tribute to him on the 13th. But we're going to be back and forth on the show as often as we can, and we're going to keep bringing it to you. I want to thank the people who came on the show today. We had Trevor Toppen, who is from Valhalla's Records, and we had Tommy Carden from the Workers' Rights Board talking about film. Next week, I'm not sure who we have, but I think we will have Lynn Orman talking about festivals and things coming up. So with all that said, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people, over and out. We want to thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show. New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Episodes air each following Thursday on CAN TV, 9 p.m., in Sweet Home Chicago on Channel 21, or streaming everywhere else at cantv.org. Audio episodes go live on WLUW each Saturday, 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM, or streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org. They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limbo. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing